Life has a funny way of throwing you curveballs when you least expect it. I never imagined I'd be the guy to stumble upon a secret like this, especially not about Sarah, my wife of 5 years. We met right out of college, fell in love, and never looked back, or so I thought. We'd been living what I believed to be a happy, somewhat routine life in our cozy little home in the suburbs, complete with our dog, Max, and the weekly game nights we both so looked forward to. That particular morning started like any other. I was getting ready for work, coffee in hand, when my phone buzzed with a notification for a new group chat I had apparently been added to. Thinking it was just another spam message or maybe a mistake, I almost didn't check it. But curiosity got the better of me and I tapped the screen. The group was named Just Us, which I found odd because none of the numbers were familiar. I scrolled through the messages to see if I could figure out what it was about. The chat was filled with talk about meeting up, grabbing drinks, and some not so subtle hints about keeping things discreet. My brow furrowed as I read. This had to be a mistake. Why would someone add me to this? Then a message popped up that made my heart stop. Can't wait to see you tonight, it read, followed by a winking emoji and love, Sarah. My Sarah? It couldn't be. There must be another Sarah, I reasoned. But as I continued to read, the details added up. Talk of places Sarah and I frequented and times when I knew she was supposedly out with friends. I sat down, my coffee forgotten, as a sinking feeling took hold. The messages detailed plans and times, and they matched Sarah's late nights at work and girls' nights perfectly. The more I read, the clearer it became that my wife, the person I trusted most in the world, was planning to meet someone else. Not just once, but multiple times, judging from the history of messages. How could I have been so blind? We'd been having dinner at the same table, sleeping in the same bed, sharing our daily lives, and yet here was a part of her life that was completely hidden from me. I felt like I was reading about a stranger, not my wife. My hands trembled with a mix of anger, sadness, and shock. I didn't know what to do next. Should I confront her? Should I gather more evidence? I knew I needed time to think, to plan my next steps carefully. This wasn't something to be handled impulsively. But one thing was for sure. My life as I knew it was about to change. And the first thing I needed to do was figure out just how deep this deception went. I spent the rest of the morning glued to my phone, scrolling through message after message in the group chat. The more I read, the more the reality of the situation sunk in. Sarah, the woman I had shared everything with, was deeply involved with someone else. Each message was like a punch to the gut, her words to this other person dripping with affection and excitement, emotions I thought were reserved for me. As I sat at our kitchen table, the same table where we had shared countless meals and plans for the future, everything around me felt suddenly foreign. The pictures on the wall, the mug she gave me last Christmas, even the way the sunlight streamed through the window. It all seemed part of a life that was no longer mine. The shock turned into a numbness as I tried to wrap my head around the betrayal. How many nights had she come home late with a smile, telling me about her tough day at work? How many times had I simply smiled back, never doubting her words? The trust we had built over the years crumbled in a matter of minutes, and I felt foolish, vulnerable. I thought back to small changes in her behavior that I had brushed off as stress from work or simple moments of distraction. But now, those moments formed a pattern that was impossible to ignore. The late night texts she quickly swiped away when I approached, her increased concern with her appearance, and even the new password on her phone that she had casually explained was a security requirement from her office. It all made sense now. Despite the mounting evidence, part of me wanted to find an explanation, any other explanation than the truth. Maybe it was a prank? Could someone be setting her up? I knew these ideas were just my desperation speaking, my mind grasping for any thread of the life I thought I knew. I had to face the truth, though. The Sarah I loved, the person I thought I would spend the rest of my life with, was planning to meet someone else tonight. They had talked about it so casually, so cheerfully, as if our marriage meant nothing. And there I was, sitting alone with my heart sinking, and the world around me continuing as if nothing had changed. but everything had changed. I felt isolated in my pain, surrounded by a life that suddenly felt like a lie. What would I do? Confronting her immediately was my first impulse, but I hesitated. What if confronting her without enough proof led to denial and more deception? I decided I needed undeniable proof before I could confront her. I would have to act normal, a thought that seemed incredibly daunting given the storm of emotions inside me. Tonight, I would follow her. I would see with my own eyes the reality of this affair. It was the only way to move forward, to confront not just Sarah, but the reality of our crumbling relationship. I had to know the full extent of the betrayal before I could decide what comes next. I braced myself for the evening, knowing that whatever happened, there was no turning back. Driving to work that morning, my mind raced with the decision at hand. Should I confront Sarah as soon as I got home, or should I continue to gather evidence? Both options seemed fraught with their own dangers. Confronting her without sufficient proof could just lead to denial and further deceit. But waiting? Gathering more evidence meant watching the woman I loved continue to betray me, perhaps losing the chance to catch her in the act. Lost in these thoughts, I pulled over and called my best friend, Mike. He answered on the second ring. After a quick greeting, I spilled everything, from discovering the chat to my plan to follow Sarah that evening. I needed his perspective, something to anchor the whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Mike listened without interrupting, a steadiness that had always made him my go-to in times of crisis. When I finished, there was a heavy pause. Then he asked the tough questions. What do you hope to achieve by confronting her? What if she just lies? What's your end game, man? I admitted I hadn't thought that far ahead. I was acting on impulse, driven by hurt and the urgent need for truth. Mike suggested a more cautious approach. Look, if you confront her now, you might never know the full story. Maybe keep watching the chat, see if you can catch them meeting up. It's not just about knowing if she's cheating, it's about understanding how deep this goes, whether it's salvageable, and if you decide it's over, you'll need all the evidence you can get for the divorce proceedings. His words made sense, but they also made my next steps feel even more daunting. To sit back and collect evidence meant watching the betrayal unfold in real time. But he was right about one thing. I needed a solid plan, not just for confronting Sarah, but for handling the aftermath. Thanks, Mike. I think you're right. It's going to be tough, but I need to know everything if I'm ever going to move past this one way or another, I said, the weight of the situation settling in. Whatever you decide, I'm here for you, Mike replied. And hey, maybe consider talking to a professional. A counselor could help you sort through this mess, give you a clear head. We ended the call with a plan for me to think things over and not rush into a confrontation. I decided to monitor the chat discreetly, collecting as much information as I could before making a move. It felt like the only way forward that gave me any control over the situation. As I resumed driving to work, the road ahead mirrored the path I had chosen. Necessary yet uncertain, filled with potential hazards, but leading to necessary revelations. My heart was heavy, my mind alert. This was not just about catching a cheater, it was about reclaiming my life and decisions from the chaos that had blindsided me. For the next few days, I threw myself into a routine of silent observation. Each morning began with a check of the group chat, capturing any new messages and plans. The details were meticulous: times, places, even what they planned to wear. It was as if I were compiling a dossier on my own personal heartbreak. With every screenshot, a piece of the life I thought we had chipped away, leaving a hollow in its place. At work, my focus drifted frequently. Tasks that normally took an hour now stretched across entire mornings. My colleagues noticed the change, their concerned glances paired with hesitant offers of help. Just a lot on my mind, I would mutter, brushing off their concerns. How could I possibly explain the real reason behind my distraction? Each evening, as I watched Sarah prepare for her work events or meetings with friends, the urge to confront her grew. Yet fear of what that confrontation would bring held me back. The reality of her betrayal, now documented in my growing collection of evidence, was almost too much to bear. Still, A part of me needed to know everything, to see the full extent of the deception before making any irreversible decisions. Night after night, I lay awake long after Sarah fell asleep, my mind replaying every message, every hidden detail of her dual life. The intimacy of their exchanges was like a knife twisting in my gut. They shared jokes, future plans, dreams, things she used to share with me. The realization that I was now the outsider in my own marriage was crushing. In quieter moments, I reflected on the past, trying to pinpoint when things had changed. Were there signs I had missed, moments I could have intervened? The truth was, even if there had been signs, I wasn't sure I would have wanted to see them. Trust had blinded me, but now suspicion kept me painfully alert. Despite the turmoil, I maintained a facade of normalcy around Sarah, though every shared smile and touch felt like an act. "How was your day?" she would ask each evening, and I would respond with generic pleasantries, all while my heart screamed for truth. The gap between us widened with each passing day, an invisible barrier built from secrets and lies. My resolve to gather all the evidence before confronting her solidified with each new piece of information. It wasn't just about confronting a cheater, it was about protecting myself, legally and emotionally, when the time came to face the aftermath. This wasn't just about heartbreak, it was about ensuring I came out of this impending disaster as intact as possible. Each screenshot, each documented lie, was a step towards reclaiming my agency in a situation where I had felt utterly powerless. It was a cold comfort, but it steeled me against the waves of pain that hit when I least expected it, during a drive, in the middle of a meeting, or while lying in bed next to the person who was supposed to be my partner for life. This preparation phase, as methodical and detached as it seemed, was my lifeline out of the chaos. The day of confrontation finally arrived, a day that felt inevitable yet surreal. I had everything laid out, screenshots, dates, exact messages. The weight of the evidence was heavy, not just in my hands, but on my heart. Deciding to confront Sarah after dinner seemed like the best option. It gave me the day to steady my nerves and prepare what I wanted to say. As we sat across from each other at dinner, small talk filled the air, a normalcy that felt like the calm before a storm. I watched her laugh and chat about her day, wondering how someone could lead such a dual existence. After we cleared the table, my heart pounded against my chest, each beat a loud drum heralding the upheaval to come. I began by asking her how she truly felt about us, about our marriage. She paused, a frown creasing her brow, sensing the shift in tone. Her response was cautious, filled with platitudes about stressful work weeks and not having enough time together. It was now or never. Pulling out the stack of printed messages, I laid them on the table. The color drained from her face as she recognized the contents. "What is this?" she asked, her voice a mix of confusion and fear. "These are messages from the group chat you accidentally added me to," I said, my voice steady despite the shaking of my hands. "I know about the affair, Sarah. I know everything." Her initial reaction was to deny, her words tumbling out in a panicked flurry. "It's not what you think," she insisted. "I can explain." But as she tried to fabricate a story, her eyes darted around, never quite meeting mine. I cut her off, unable to bear the lies any longer. "I've seen enough to know exactly what it is," I said. "How long has this been going on?" The room filled with a heavy silence, the kind that suffocates. Finally, she confessed, her voice a whisper, admitting to several months of deceit. The anger and betrayal I felt were overwhelming, yet there was also a profound sadness. The person I had loved and trusted most in the world had become a stranger to me. "Why?" was the only question I could muster through the tightness in my throat. Her answers were vague, filled with excuses about feeling neglected and misunderstood. She spoke of lost connections and seeking comfort, but none of it justified the betrayal. As she spoke, it became clear that the woman I thought I knew, the life we had built together, was perhaps nothing more than a facade. The conversation lasted hours, but the outcome was inevitable. The trust we had was shattered, possibly beyond repair. As we talked, it became clear that this was not just a lapse in judgment, but a revelation of deeper issues in our marriage and in her. As she pleaded for forgiveness, promising that it would never happen again, I knew this was a crossroads. Could I ever trust her again? Was this the end of our marriage? These questions loomed large as the night grew deeper, each answer as complex as the emotions swirling within me. The aftermath of our confrontation left a palpable tension in the air, a cloud of unsaid words and unresolved emotions hovering between us. Sarah and I moved around each other like strangers, our interactions reduced to the bare necessities of daily life. The home we had built together felt different now, its walls echoing with the remnants of our fractured trust. In the following days, I found myself wrestling with an array of conflicting feelings. The hurt from her betrayal was overwhelming, yet there were moments when the memories of better times would flood in, bringing with them a painful nostalgia. It was in these moments that the temptation to try and salvage what we had became strongest. I contemplated the feasibility of forgiveness. Could I truly forgive her and move past this? What would it take to rebuild our relationship from such a fundamental breach of trust? These questions haunted me, each one spawning a myriad of others, all without easy answers. Therapy was one option we discussed, a space to unpack our issues with a professional who could guide us through the healing process. But the thought of sitting through those sessions, dissecting our marriage, dredging up every slight and oversight was daunting. Conversely, the option of separation loomed as a stark but increasingly viable alternative. The thought of untangling our lives was heart-wrenching. It wasn't just about splitting assets or deciding who would move out. It was about disentangling the deeply woven fabric of our shared existence. Every plan we had made, every dream we had nurtured together would need to be re-evaluated or abandoned. I reached out to friends and family during this time, seeking advice and solace. Each conversation offered different perspectives, some encouraging reconciliation, others supporting a fresh start. Their words, filled with concern and support, were comforting, yet they also underscored the gravity of the decision before me. The emotional distance between Sarah and me grew with each passing day. We were like cohabitants, sharing space but not life, each interaction tinged with an undercurrent of sadness and regret. She made efforts to bridge the gap, small gestures that once would have touched me but now felt like too little, too late. The decision of whether to stay or leave weighed heavily on me. I knew that whichever path I chose, the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Staying meant embarking on a long, uncertain journey of rebuilding, full of potential setbacks and the need for immense personal and mutual growth. Leaving meant stepping into the unknown, rebuilding my life independently, and facing the inevitable grief that comes with the end of a significant relationship. As days turned into weeks, the need to make a decision became more pressing. I spent long nights pondering, weighing the potential outcomes, trying to envision a future from each perspective. The clarity I sought was elusive, but the need to move forward one way or another became the only certainty. During this tumultuous time, the value of a strong support system became undeniably clear. One evening I decided to visit my parents, the need to be around familiar, comforting presence overwhelming the desire to isolate myself. They welcomed me with the warmth and love only parents can offer, sensing my distress even before I spoke a word. Sitting at their kitchen table, the same one where I had shared countless meals and stories from my childhood, I opened up about everything. My parents listened intently, their expressions a mix of concern and sadness as I recounted the recent revelations about Sarah. My mother, ever the empathetic listener, reached across the table to squeeze my hand, offering silent solidarity. My father, more pragmatic, leaned back in his chair, his brow furrowed as he processed the information. The advice they offered reflected their personalities and the dynamic of their own marriage. My mother encouraged a path of forgiveness and healing, emphasizing the power of therapy and the potential for personal growth and reconciliation. People make mistakes, she reminded me, but it's the effort to mend and heal that truly defines the strength of a relationship. My father, on the other hand, presented a more cautious approach. He stressed the importance of self-respect and the need to protect one's emotional well-being. You have to think about whether you can truly move past this, he said. Forgiveness is one thing, but forgetting and fully trusting again is quite another. You need to consider if you're capable of that, and more importantly, if it's what you truly want. Their differing perspectives left me with much to consider. The drive home was a quiet one, filled with contemplation, spurred by their words. Over the next few days, I reached out to several close friends, each of whom offered their own insights and advice. One friend suggested I take a break, some time away from Sarah, to gain perspective and clarity. Distance might give you the space you need to figure things out, he advised. Another friend shared his own experience with a similar situation, highlighting how counseling had helped him and his partner navigate through the aftermath of betrayal. It's tough, but not impossible, he assured me. Each piece of advice added layers to my decision-making process. The diversity in their suggestions reflected the complexity of my situation. There was no one-size-fits-all solution to something as deeply personal as marital infidelity. As I mulled over their advice, I realized that this decision was not just about choosing whether to stay or leave. It was about determining the kind of life I wanted to lead and the kind of love I was willing to accept. The insights from my family and friends had provided me with a spectrum of possibilities, each with its own set of implications and outcomes. Now it was up to me to decide which path aligned most closely with my values, my needs, and my vision for the future. After much reflection and discussion with friends and family, I realized the importance of understanding my legal options, regardless of whether I decided to reconcile with Sarah or proceed with a separation. Making an appointment with a lawyer seemed like the next logical step, not necessarily to initiate a divorce, but to understand my standing if it came to that. The meeting with the lawyer was both enlightening and daunting. She laid out the various scenarios based on my situation, explaining the implications of each choice, whether it was separation, divorce, or reconciliation. We discussed everything from the division of assets and financial implications to the potential emotional toll of each scenario. Knowledge is power, she said, emphasizing that the more informed I was, the better equipped I'd be to make a decision that was right for me. This advice resonated deeply, highlighting that this wasn't just about the emotional aspects of my marriage, but also about protecting my future, regardless of the outcome. Parallel to the legal advisement, I started sessions with a therapist. The emotional turmoil had begun to affect all aspects of my life, and I recognized the need for professional guidance to navigate through these troubled waters. The therapy sessions provided a safe space to explore my feelings of betrayal, hurt, and confusion. It was here that I began to understand the depth of the impact Sarah's actions had on my self-esteem and trust. The therapist guided me through exercises to assess my emotional state and what I truly wanted from my marriage. We discussed the concept of forgiveness, not just as a gift to the person who wronged me, but as a way to free myself from ongoing resentment. Forgiveness is for you, the therapist noted. It's a way to move forward, whether that's together or apart. This perspective was challenging but crucial. It shifted my focus from the past actions to my future happiness. These professional interactions were pivotal. The lawyer provided the structure, the black and white legality of what could be done, while the therapist dealt with the gray areas, the emotional complexities of my decision. Both perspectives were crucial, helping me to see that my next steps needed to be both emotionally informed and practically grounded. Armed with this new understanding, I felt a growing sense of empowerment. The decision ahead still loomed large, but I now felt equipped to make it with a full understanding of the implications. The process was not just about deciding if I could forgive Sarah, but also about ensuring my future well-being and happiness. irrespective of her presence in my life. With each session, whether legal or therapeutic, I pieced together a vision of what my future could look like. I started to envision a path that led to peace and personal growth, understanding that the next steps I took would need to support this vision. This clarity did not eliminate the pain of the betrayal, but it gave me a roadmap for the journey ahead, which now seemed a little less daunting. The day arrived when I had to make my choice. After countless hours of reflection, advice from loved ones, legal consultations, and therapy sessions, I was finally ready to decide the direction of my personal life and my marriage to Sarah. It wasn't an easy decision, nor was it made lightly, but clarity had come from understanding both my emotional desires and practical needs. I opted for separation. This decision, while heart-wrenching, felt like the only viable path forward that preserved my emotional health and respected my need for trust and honesty in a relationship, elements that had been irrevocably damaged in our marriage. The practical steps to initiate this process were clear, thanks to the groundwork laid in discussions with my lawyer. I would need to formalize the separation legally, which involved negotiating terms that were fair but firm, covering everything from financial arrangements to mutual property. Equally important was planning for my emotional transition. The therapist had helped me realize that ending a marriage, especially under these circumstances, would be akin to mourning a loss. I prepared myself for a period of grief and adjustment, recognizing that healing would not be linear and would require ongoing support from therapy and my support network. I also committed to engaging in activities and hobbies that had previously brought joy and a sense of fulfillment, understanding that rebuilding my life meant investing in my well-being and interests. Furthermore, I made arrangements to move out of the home Sarah and I shared. This practical step was necessary to create physical and emotional space for myself to foster a new beginning. Searching for a new place, though daunting amid everything else, was also a step toward reclaiming my independence and establishing a new environment that reflected my current reality and future hopes. To ensure I remained grounded and focused during this tumultuous time, I planned a structured routine that included regular exercise, time with friends and family, and moments of solitude for reflection. It was essential to maintain a balance between being socially connected and having personal time to process the significant changes in my life. I also decided to continue therapy. The insights and growth that had come from my sessions were invaluable, and I knew that maintaining this support would be crucial as I navigated the early days of separation and beyond. My therapist and I outlined goals for our future sessions, focusing on developing resilience and exploring new opportunities for personal development. As I implemented these steps, the weight of the decision began to feel less like a burden and more like a pathway to a new phase of life. It was about taking control, not just responding to the circumstances that had been thrust upon me. Each action, from legal steps to personal care strategies, was taken with a focus on creating a stable, fulfilling future. This approach did not erase the pain or complexity of the situation, but it provided a framework within which I could work, grow, and eventually find happiness again. It was about moving forward, not just moving on, and every step was taken with an eye toward building a life that was not defined by betrayal, but informed by it and evolved beyond it. As the initial steps towards separation were set in motion, I found myself grappling with the daily realities of this new phase in my life. The legal proceedings, although necessary, were mentally and emotionally taxing. Meetings with my lawyer to finalize the separation agreement, dividing assets, and discussing potential alimony were stark reminders of how far Sarah and I had drifted apart. Each signature on the documents felt like an acknowledgement of the end of a chapter in my life that I had once cherished. During this time, maintaining a routine proved to be a lifeline. I focused on staying physically active, which not only helped in managing stress, but also provided a mental break from the complexities of the divorce proceedings. Regular runs in the park and workouts at the gym became more than just physical activities. They were moments of mental clarity and release. Social interactions also played a crucial role during this period. Reconnecting with old friends and strengthening bonds with family members who had been my support system throughout this ordeal added layers of normalcy and comfort to my days. Dinners, movie nights, and even simple phone calls with these important people in my life helped to fill the void that the separation had created. They offered not just distractions, but also perspectives that helped me see beyond the immediate pain of the situation. Simultaneously, I continued with my therapy sessions, which were essential in helping me navigate my emotions and plans for the future. My therapist helped me explore my feelings of loss, betrayal, and the rebuilding of my self-esteem. We worked on strategies for coping with change and discussed ways to approach potential new relationships with a sense of hope rather than fear. These sessions were instrumental in transforming my outlook, gradually shifting my focus from what I had lost to the opportunities that lay ahead.